Hey traders, it's John Fortune here of this week's Weekly Forex Forecast for the 6th of April to the 10th of April 2020. As always, we're going to start off by looking at the US dollar index and crude oil before running through a number of markets, looking at the key levels of support and resistance in the process. I'm also going to be highlighting some of the targets that we're going to be looking for in this coming week and also for the weeks ahead. So I hope you're having a nice weekend. Let's jump over to the charts and see where the money is this week. As always, we're going to start off by looking at the US dollar index. Now, last week we highlighted the fact that the US dollar index overall was in this large kind of expanding triangle, this megaphone kind of pattern, which is a terrible pattern to come across because it conveys extreme indecision. So we like to see the markets moving, trending, rallying. This is where we can actually, or declining, even selling off. This is where we can make good money. When it starts to chop around, especially in an expanded triangle or for an extended period of time, it makes the market conditions harder to trade. However, coming into this week, we did start to trade to the upside. We broke out of this down move in the dollar index last week, and the previous momentum wave to the upside is this. So we are looking further advances to the upside, looking to come up and test this top at the very least, but also up to the 103.87. So going into next week, any pullback in this area is going to be viewed as an opportunity to look for a bounce to the upside in the dollar index. And if we can come back, especially if we can come back and retest broken resistance from the past, turning support here, the 97.95. This would be a great place next week to look for a bounce to the upside if we do pull back, and we're going to be looking for further advances in the dollar index up towards the next key resistance to the upside of the target set at the 103.82. So going into next week, we are overall going to have a bullish bias on the dollar, meaning we will favor dollar long positions, so euro dollar to the downside, US dollar CAD to the upside going into next week. So next market we're going to look at is crude oil. Now last week we highlighted the key area of support to the downside, the 1945, and we did come and take out the target set from last week, which was right here. We took it out almost to the pip before rallying to the upside, and we finished the week higher up in crude oil off the back of the remarks of Donald Trump, the US President. Going into next week, we are looking for further advances to the upside in crude oil in the short term. Something important to note when trading this market next week is we do have a meeting with the OPEC members on Monday. There is likely going to be an announcement about potentially a decrease, although we don't know, it's hard to say, and we don't want to try and guess what's going to be said before it happens, but there is a possibility of a decrease in the supply of oil coming out of some of the OPEC members, and if that is the case, we are likely to see volatility in the crude oil market. So if you are trading crude oil and you want to be safe next week, better to look at this maybe from Tuesday onwards. However, going into next week, if we do get a pullback and if we start to correct down towards the 21.17, any pullback in this area is going to be viewed as an opportunity to start to look for bullish setups. And if we get the right kind of bullish setups in this market, we're going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the next key of resistance, the upside of the target set at a 32.84. And if we can get a breakthrough here, we're going to be looking up towards the next key of resistance, the upside and target 2 at the 40.94. So next market we're going to look at is euro dollar. Now last week we started the week up in this area and we highlighted the fact we were looking further declines to the downside in this market. You can see because of the big price volatility swings, it may be difficult to come back and retest some of these key areas of broken support, in this case looking to send resistance at 1.13530. So any pullback in this area, even if we do not come back here, any pullback in this area is going to be viewed now as an opportunity for short positions, or to look for short positions, treating this just as a big bear flag, okay, in the euro dollar. And we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key of support to the downside of the target set from last week at the 1.0569. So next market we're going to look at is pound dollar. Now last week we were looking further declines to the downside. We started the week here and we did finish the week down, but we didn't really go anywhere. We pretty much moved sideways in the pound dollar. So our outlook is really unchanged from last week. We're still looking for short setups in this market, and you can see we're starting to break out now of this up move here. So any pullback in this area or any move higher is going to be viewed as an opportunity to start to look for bearish setups. And we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key of support to the downside of the target set at the 1.1034. So next market we're going to look at is US dollar Japanese yen. Now we are still looking further downside in the US dollar Japanese yen, although US dollar Japanese yen to the downside is opposite to our outlook in the dollar index. So what does this tell us? Well, it tells us that the Japanese yen is actually also a strong currency. So if you're going and trading your cross pairs and your other pairs, the Japanese yen is also something you want to consider going into next week outside of the dollar. And the second thing is that it means that we're probably not going to trade this pair next week. However, we like to keep these currencies as what we call Plan B currency. It just means that if, for example, in the dollar index, we've pulled back, as you can see, we have key area of broken resistance over here. We haven't tested it yet as support. If, for whatever reason, we start to pull back towards that key area of broken resistance and it does look to turn support in the dollar index, then this would be a weakening. It's just a short-term weakening of the dollar index, and instead of trading the other pairs, we could come to the US dollar yen and we could look at this market in order to capitalize on that dollar weakness. So we're going to be using this as a Plan B currency going into next week, meaning we'll put it to the back of our list and only look to trade this if we start to see a weakening instead of a strengthening dollar index. But either way, any pullback in this area, once again, is going to be viewed just as it was up here. We highlighted this key area of resistance to look for a sell-off. Any pullback in this area back towards the 111.54 is going to be viewed as another opportunity to start to look for short positions. And we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key area of support to the downside and the target set at the 101.86. So next market we're going to look at is Aussie dollar. Now last week we highlighted the 0.61250 as an area to start to look for a reversal to the downside. We did trade into this area and we started to reverse to the downside. Although very similar to the pound dollar, we pretty much did nothing last week in this currency. So very simply put, going into this week, our outlook is still the same. Any pullback in this area is going to provide another opportunity to start to look for anybody who's not already short, start to look for short positions in this market. And we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key of support to the downside and the target set at the 0.5478. Now just remember, we also have an interest rate decision coming out of Australia on Tuesday, so the markets might get a bit volatile. Nobody is going to be raising, no central bank is going to be raising rates anytime soon, certainly not in the G10. So we wouldn't expect any serious surprises to the upside, but just bear that in mind because the markets still may get a little bit volatile around that time on Tuesday. So next market we're going to look at is New Zealand dollar. Now in last week's video we highlighted the 0.60050 as an area to start to look for a reversal to the downside in this market. We did pull back into this level and we have started to break to the downside. Very simply put, going into next week, again, it was just a bit of a lackluster week. I mean, a number of these currency pairs didn't really go anywhere. So going into this week, we still have a similar outlook to last week. We are looking for further declines to the downside in this market. Any pullback in this area, especially if we can get a retest of 0.600050, anybody who's not short from last week, this would provide an opportunity to once again start to look for bearish setups. And if we pull back and we get the right kind of bearish setups, we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key of support to the downside and the target set at the 0.5269. So the next market we're going to look at is the US dollar Swiss franc. Now the US dollar Swiss franc has sort of mimicked the dollar index here, not surprisingly, and we haven't pulled all the way back to the 0.9340, and that's just because these swings are so wild. However, going into next week, we are still looking for further advances to the upside. Last week, we were looking further advance to the upside, and we did move up, and we started to climb up towards the highs over here and towards the target set from last week. So once again, any pullback in this area next week, and it's unlikely we come all the way down unless we get a bigger reversal in the dollar index. Any pullback in this area going into next week is going to be viewed as an opportunity to start to look for bullish setups. And if we get the right kind of bullish setups in this area, we are once again going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the next key of resistance to the upside and the target set at the 0.9959. So the next market we're going to look at is US dollar CAD. Now, in last week's video and also in the previous week, we highlighted the 1.3990 as an area to start to look for a bounce to the upside in this market. We did come down and test this, and we have started to bounce to the upside. Again, bit of a lackluster week last week in the markets. We didn't really move anywhere, just kind of corrected sideways. So very simply put, going into this week, we are still looking for further advances to the upside in this market. Any pullback towards the 1.3990 is going to be viewed as an opportunity to once again look for bullish setups. And we're going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the next key of resistance to the upside and the target set at the 1.4688. And if we can get a break through here, we're going to be looking up towards the next key of resistance to the upside and target 2 at the 1.4947. And last but not least, we have gold. Now, last week we were looking further declines to the downside. Gold is still structured to the downside near term. We didn't really go anywhere in gold last week, very similar to a number of the other currencies we've looked at. So very simply put, our outlook remains the same in gold. We are looking for potential short setups in this market. Any pullback, and preferably as always, if we can come back and retest broken support from the past, turning resistance, in this case at the 1652.88. This will be a great chance to start to look for bearish setups. And if we get the right kind of bearish setups in this market, we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key of support to the downside in the target set at the 1445.80. So that is it from me for this week, guys. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please let me know by liking, sharing and subscribing. Big thank you to everybody who does that on a regular basis, and a big thank you to everybody who has subscribed to the channel so far. I want to wish you all a nice weekend, and I want to wish you all a profitable week next week. The only thing left to say is take care, and don't forget to trade safely.